Imagine a family so ruthless, so cunning, that they turned the Vatican into a den of sin, corruption, and scandal. The Borgias didn't just seek power, they mastered it, using betrayal, bribery, and murder to rise above all rivals. From a pope who flaunted his children to a son feared across Italy for his cruelty, and a daughter shrouded in mystery and scandal, this is the story of the Vatican's darkest dynasty. Stay tuned, because once you learn what they did, modern controversies will look tame. If you love uncovering history's darkest secrets, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more shocking stories. In the late 15th century, Italy was not a united country, but a collection of powerful city-states, each scheming against the other for dominance. At the heart of it all was Rome, the seat of the Catholic Church. The papacy was supposed to be a beacon of morality, guiding millions of faithful believers. But behind the gilded doors of the Vatican, things were far less holy. Politics, power, and corruption ruled, and into this world stepped the Borgias. The family's story begins in Spain, in the small town of Jattiva. Rodrigo Borgia, born into relative obscurity, quickly proved himself to be more ambitious than most. With connections to an influential uncle who had once been pope, Rodrigo entered the church not out of deep religious conviction, but because it was the surest path to wealth and power. And Rodrigo wasn't the type to waste an opportunity. He was charming, intelligent, and above all cunning. Rising through the ranks, Rodrigo secured a position as a cardinal at just 25 years old. From there, his influence grew rapidly. He was a master manipulator, using wealth, alliances, and even his charisma with women to expand his reach. Rome was filled with ambitious men, but Rodrigo Borgia had a rare talent. He understood that power came not just from strength, but from knowing exactly when to buy, bribe, or betray. By 1492, Rodrigo achieved what seemed unthinkable. Through a mixture of lavish bribes, promises of favors, and ruthless politicking, he was elected pope. He took the name Alexander VI, and with it, the Vatican itself became his personal stage. His victory was not just a religious triumph, it was a political conquest. Enemies whispered that the papacy had been bought, not earned, and they weren't wrong. For the people of Rome, Alexander VI's reign was shocking. Popes before him had been flawed, but Rodrigo Borgia flaunted his corruption. He openly acknowledged his children, placing them in positions of influence, and treated the papal office less like a holy duty and more like a throne from which he could launch the Borgia dynasty. The Vatican, once a sacred space, began to transform into something else entirely, a court of intrigue, luxury, and scandal. To Rodrigo, this wasn't sacrilege. It was strategy. The Borgias were no longer outsiders from Spain. They were Rome's new rulers, and with Alexander VI on the papal throne, the Vatican itself would become the family's most powerful weapon. The rise of Rodrigo Borgia marked the beginning of one of the most infamous dynasties in history. But this was only the opening act. What came next would shock the world. Once Rodrigo Borgia ascended to the papal throne as Alexander VI, his ambitions expanded far beyond the spiritual realm. He did not view the papacy merely as a position of religious authority. To him, it was a throne from which he could orchestrate power, wealth, and influence for the Borgia family. From the outset, it became clear that the Vatican under Alexander VI would be a stage for intrigue, luxury, and scandal. Rodrigo's most striking characteristic was his unapologetic embrace of personal ambition. Unlike previous popes who at least attempted to maintain a veneer of sanctity, Alexander VI openly flaunted his favoritism toward his children, Cesare, Lucrezia, and Juan. He used the church's immense wealth to secure strategic marriages, bribe influential cardinals, and fund military campaigns that strengthened both the papacy and the Borgia family. No alliance was too dangerous, no bribe too extravagant if it served his goals. His court became a center of intrigue. Courtiers whispered about secret deals, assassinations, and betrayals carried out in the shadowed corridors of the Vatican. Gold and jewels flowed freely, and Rome's elite knew that proximity to the Pope could yield immense rewards or deadly consequences. Alexander VI's manipulation extended beyond the walls of the Vatican. He forged alliances with powerful Italian families and foreign rulers alike, turning Rome into a hub of political strategy and espionage. Perhaps the most controversial aspect of his papacy was the way he treated his children. Cesare, initially groomed to be a cardinal, would later abandon the clergy for military power, becoming one of history's most feared strategists. Lucrezia, used as a political pawn through arranged marriages, was rumored to be involved in poisonings and intrigues, though much of her reputation was shaped by gossip and fear. Juan, the youngest, was given titles and lands, his life carefully curated to elevate the Borgia name. Alexander VI's devotion to his family was boundless, even if it scandalized the faithful. Beyond family, the Pope's tactics were ruthless. He did not hesitate to eliminate rivals through exile, imprisonment, or even assassination. Any threat to Borgia dominance was dealt with swiftly and decisively. The result was a Vatican that, while outwardly magnificent, hid a darker truth. The seat of Christendom had become a theater of ambition, corruption, and power struggles. Under Alexander VI, the Vatican became more than a religious institution. It was the epicenter of one of the most notorious dynasties in history. The Borgias' cunning, wealth, and unrelenting ambition ensured that no corner of Rome or Italy was safe from their influence. But while Rodrigo's strategies brought immense power, they also sowed seeds of jealousy, fear, and revenge that would haunt the family for decades. The Pope had transformed the Vatican into a den of sin and intrigue, but in doing so, he had set the stage for the next chapter, the rise of his son, Cesare Borgia, whose ambition and ruthlessness would make his father's machinations look tame. If Rodrigo Borgia was the cunning architect of the family's power, Cesare Borgia was its most terrifying instrument. Born into privilege and scandal, Cesare grew up in the shadow of his father's ambition. Initially groomed for the church, he became a cardinal at a young age, a position that seemed fitting for a pope's son. But Cesare had little interest in the sacred duties of a cleric. His mind was drawn to power in its rawest form: politics, war, and domination. Cesare's transformation from cardinal to military mastermind shocked Italy. He renounced his religious position to pursue a career in arms, demonstrating that ambition often required shedding morality, or in his case, holy office. With his father's support, Cesare began carving out a dominion in central Italy using cunning, intimidation, and ruthlessness. He was brilliant at strategy, understanding that fear and loyalty were two sides of the same coin. Any noble or ruler who resisted him soon discovered that Cesare's intelligence was matched only by his capacity for cruelty. Many of Cesare's enemies fell victim to subtle and horrifying methods. Poisonings, sudden ambushes, and calculated betrayals were part of his arsenal. Yet he was not merely a brute. He was a political genius who understood alliances, timing, and deception better than almost anyone of his era. Cesare's rise was rapid and unstoppable, and it became clear that the Borgias were not merely a family. They were a force that could reshape Italy's political landscape. Cesare's relationship with his father was both a strength and a reflection of the Borgia way. Rodrigo provided resources, legitimacy, and protection, while Cesare executed the family's ambitions on the battlefield and in the courts. His sister Lucrezia became another tool in the family's arsenal, with marriages arranged to strengthen alliances. Cesare's actions, however, often cast a shadow over her reputation, contributing to the lasting myths of the poisonous Borgia family. Despite his brilliance, Cesare's methods were polarizing. Many admired his tactical genius, while others feared him as the embodiment of ruthless ambition. His campaigns left trails of conquered lands, subdued rivals, and shattered alliances. But each victory reinforced the Borgia legend. demonstrating that this family, born in Spain but perfected in Rome, was unmatched in audacity and cunning. Cesareborgia's rise was both a continuation of Rodrigo's schemes and a harbinger of chaos. The Vatican had been transformed into a center of intrigue under Alexander VI, but with Cesare leading military campaigns, the Borgias' influence extended far beyond Rome. Their name became synonymous with power, corruption, and the deadly cost of ambition. The stage was now set for the next chapter of the Borgia saga, Lucreziaborgia, whose beauty and intelligence would weave a story of scandal, manipulation, and survival that rivals the darkest legends of the Renaissance. Lucreziaborgia was born into scandal and power, a daughter of Pope Alexander VI, and a family whose reputation for intrigue was unmatched in Renaissance Europe. While her father, Rodrigo, and brother Cesare pursued power through politics, war, and manipulation, Lucrezia's life was shaped by another kind of weapon: her beauty, charm, and intelligence. In the dangerous world of the Borgias, she became both a symbol and a tool, a pawn in a game that often blurred the lines between survival and sin. From a young age, Lucrezia was married strategically to cement political alliances. Her first marriage at the age of 13 to Giovanni Sforza, heir of the powerful Milanese family, was a union dictated entirely by her father's ambition. While young and inexperienced, she quickly learned to navigate the treacherous waters of noble courts, observing power, deceit, and betrayal firsthand. Rumors followed her like a shadow, poisoning, secret affairs, and complicity in her family's schemes. But historians argue that much of her notorious reputation was exaggerated, often fueled by fear of the Borgia name. Lucrezia's intelligence allowed her to survive in a male-dominated and often deadly environment. She understood that appearances were as important as actions. Behind the delicate gowns and poised demeanor, she was a shrewd political operator, subtly influencing decisions and alliances. Her marriages, though arranged for her family's benefit, were also opportunities for her to wield power in her own right. She became respected, even feared, not because she commanded armies like Cesare, but because she understood influence in its most subtle form. Yet scandal clung to her. Courtiers whispered about suspicious deaths and mysterious illnesses around her, rumors that cemented her image as a poisonous Borgia. In truth, Lucrezia was more a survivor than a villain, using the tools available to her, beauty, charm, intellect, to protect herself and her family. Her life illustrates the complex role women played in Renaissance politics, especially in a family as ruthless as the Borgias. As the Borgia family's power reached its peak, Lucrezia became a figure both admired and feared. Her life was a delicate balance between personal survival and family loyalty, navigating treachery while maintaining dignity and grace. The world saw scandal, but beneath the rumors was a woman of remarkable intelligence and resilience, capable of maneuvering through a dangerous political landscape with subtle mastery. Lucrezia's story reminds us that the Borgias were not just a family of men scheming for power. They were a dynasty where beauty, cunning, and survival were as essential as brute force, and where even a daughter could become a symbol of both fascination and fear. The stage was now set for the final chapter of the Borgia saga, their legacy of sin, power, and scandal, and how their actions reshaped the Vatican and left a mark on history that endures to this day. The Borgias' rise to power was meteoric, but no dynasty lasts forever. By the early 16th century, the family's fortune began to wane. Rodrigo Borgia, once the most powerful man in Christendom, died in 1503, leaving a legacy of wealth, scandal, and political influence that could not withstand the shifting tides of Italian politics. His death triggered a chain reaction. Cesare's enemies rallied, alliances crumbled, and the family's grip on power began to slip. Cesare, despite his brilliance as a military commander and strategist, could not hold on to the empire his father had helped him build. Betrayals and battles eventually forced him into exile, and his once feared name faded from the courts of Italy. Lucrezia, ever the survivor, navigated her later life with intelligence and poise, marrying into new alliances and maintaining her dignity amidst rumors that had haunted her since childhood. The youngest, Juan, had already succumbed to illness, leaving the family's line increasingly vulnerable. Yet the Borgia name endured far longer than the family itself. Their story became a symbol of what unchecked ambition, cunning, and ruthlessness could achieve, and the devastating consequences of mixing power, corruption, and family loyalty. The Vatican, once transformed into their personal stage, would forever bear traces of their influence, both in the political intrigue that followed and in the cautionary tales whispered through history. Even centuries later, the Borgias continue to fascinate. They inspire books, movies, and television series, drawing attention to the darker side of Renaissance politics. Their legacy is a mix of brilliance and brutality, beauty and betrayal, cunning and scandal. The Borgias were not just a family. They were a force that reshaped an era, proving that ambition without restraint can be as seductive as it is dangerous. In the end, the story of the Borgias is more than a tale of scandal and power. It's a human story of ambition, survival, and the consequences of striving for more than what morality or even God might allow. They remind us that history is often written in shades of grey, where heroes and villains are not so easily separated. If you enjoyed diving into the dark world of the Borgias and want to uncover more secrets of history's most notorious families, don't forget to like this video, share it with your friends, and subscribe to the channel for more captivating stories from the past. History is never as simple as it seems, and the next tale may shock you even more.